Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. All right, guys, welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm Ryan here with my co-host Matt. This is episode 33. We're excited to be back with you. We've got a guest on the show this week. Joe Herr is with us. He's a father, entrepreneur, husband, and overall great guy. And we're excited to have you with us, Joe. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. So let's dive in first and get Matt's kind of overview. I know you guys are friends there, live near each other in Florida here. And Matt, what can you tell us about Mr. Joe?
Well, first of all, I think what we should do is just let the audience know that most of the people listen to this, and not many compared to the listening audience are watching. So, Joe, you can put your shirt back on. Because for those that are listening, I met Joe in Crunch about, what was it, 5 years ago? I think 2020. And, my first step into Crunch at Lakewood Ranch, and I'm scoping out who it is that I think are going to be friends of mine or who I think I might have some common ground with. And of course, I've never been huge, but I walk up and there's a room full of people, and Joe walks past, and he's got some nice big broad shoulders, good solid chest, and some tree trunk legs. And it's like, oh, geez, damn bodybuilder, right? And the stereotypical physique of someone that's really made their size and look very, very much a priority, which I applaud. Quite often is followed with a different personality than Joe's was. And so I was initially thrown off by that. I think a lot of people can be, and he'll get into how that became who he is now. But he became a very quick, close friend of mine, and we've been through an absolute enormous amount together. And I'm thrilled to have you on, Joe, to be able to share a little bit about how you got that size and, what led you to becoming, a fitness fanatic, and sharing that, because I know the story in spots, but I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to hear what it was like before that. And today's episode is really centered around that strength to overcome that you found from a life that almost doesn't seem like it matches who you are today. Thrilled to have you on as a friend and as a contributor to this show. So, Joe, thanks for that. I hope that was a worthy introduction. And I got in the studio about 4 minutes ago with hair sideways, kids flying around, and we've all got kids, we've all got wives, and we've all been in the fitness business. So we could be here for 4 or 5 hours. But Joe, I want to hear from you a little bit about your recollection of when we met, and then we're going to dive in on some of the stuff that I maybe don't know, and Ryan certainly doesn't know about how it all began.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks again. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on your show. Proud of you guys. I'm proud of you, Matt, for being consistent with your podcasting. It's not easy to do. So again, honored to be on. Yeah, when I met Matt at that time, I think I was kind of at the height of Crunch, my role there. I had done a lot of some pretty impressive things as a trainer, and I'd moved on to a management and met Matt, and I immediately knew that he was a sharp guy that had, someone that I could be friends with, someone that, I definitely respected in the gym industry. So we became close, like he said. We'd go golfing. I remember we had a come to Jesus moment when we were golfing. You remember what I'm talking about, Matt?
I do.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of our journey out of the gym and into a new life. And so it's been pretty exciting to watch him, even as recently, move into this new chapter of his life. Very just grateful to be here. And I guess we can talk about my beginnings before the gym. I think that would probably make the most sense, maybe before working out or before I found the fitness industry. What do you think? Maybe a good starting point?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that know you as this built trainer and manager, and obviously you've got a storied past with Crunch. So I think if we could maybe go back to where that all began, share that story with us a little bit, and then we can sort of get into, well, some of the times that were a little more challenging to stay focused on that journey and that path. So take us
Yeah,
as far back as you can to, well, how did you even get introduced into the fitness industry? And then we'll unfold that.
I'll try to. Yeah, okay. So I'll try to make it quicker from the very beginning because I was a soccer player growing up, and I weighed about 135 pounds soaking wet. Never lifted it, never did any kind of gym, was not raised in the gym at all, didn't know anything about it, to be honest. And then my mom and I, or our family, we moved next to this kid who was like a wrestler, six pack, just jacked. And, but he's real short, and we became best friends. And I lived right next to him. And he worked out every day. He had a shed with gym equipment. So basically, I had to. And we became best friends. And then I fell in love with working out. And so in high school, I really dove into working out. And I finally, before that, I kind of lost who I was. I didn't have much of an identity, and I kind of didn't have much going on. Working out made me feel that was the first time I felt like I was good at something. So pushed into that, did real well as a power lifter. For me, I did real well. And then high school ended, didn't have a lot of direction, moved to Gainesville, drank all the time. That's when I kind of began my drinking journey. So I worked out occasionally, but mainly partied, mainly got into the drinking scene. That became kind of the most important thing for me. So the gym kind of took a back seat. And throughout the years, my drinking got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I would just move to a new town. So I moved from Gainesville because my original goal was to go to school. Didn't really accomplish that. Did a stint at Santa Fe Community College and then just partied. Left, thought maybe it's the town. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's the town. So I moved to Orlando. My brother lived there and he was able to get me a job bartending, which probably isn't the greatest idea for someone who likes to drink. But, you know, that was the natural progression. So I moved to Orlando and now I'm not going to school. Now I'm just bartending. Still sprinkling in the gym, but very, very little. Orlando, it got very, very bad. Orlando, I lived about 45 minutes from my job, and I worked on City Walk in Orlando, and I would drink almost every night after work, and I would drive home. And 3 nights a week, I would black out and drive home. So I would do a 30 to 40-minute drive and not remember how I got home. That's how bad it got in Orlando. Um, and so it stayed that way for about a year, and then I realized I gotta get out of here. Maybe a new town would bring me a new me. So Orlando became real bad, moved to Tampa. Buddy, I had a friend of mine who lived in Tampa and he had an apartment. So I decided, you know what, maybe I'll give that a try. Let's see how things go. So that was just as bad, if not worse. Partying, and again, no real focus, still bartending, still living the restaurant scene, and then sprinkling in working out. So Tampa is where I finally woke up one morning, uh, basically at some stranger's house. A girl woke up in the morning and said to myself, "What the hell are you doing? Like this has got to stop. This is just ridiculous. You're going to kill someone or you're going to kill yourself because all the nights of driving, drinking, not knowing what I was doing, it finally just hit me that morning. I don't know what it was about that morning that hit me, but that was the morning it all changed. And that morning I was 24 years old. It was September 27th. And that morning I just quit. That was the beginning of my journey. And from there, that's when I found, working out. So I was about 6 months not drinking. I was still bartending, believe it or not. So I still bartended and, but I found working out and that So I dove into working out, and that's what brought me back to working out and then eventually competing. And so that's kind of a shorter, condensed version of kind of how I got to competing. And then through competing, I take it as competing saved my life. It really did, because although I quit drinking, I still had this insatiable desire. It's funny because I was just putting up my lights today, which I didn't want to do, my Christmas lights. And I decided to listen to this Audible that a friend of mine I met on a Costa Rican trip, he gave me. It's called Wild at Heart. And it says that the men have three things that they desire, that like it's built in us. And it's a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. And that battle to fight, I think the working out is what helped kind of tame that. That battle, that was my battle, working out. So anyways, competing is what kind of drove me into the gym industry. In fact, I was competing way before I was in the gym industry, and then I got in the gym industry by default. And so that kind of led me to where I am, or led me to the gym where I met Matt. So that's kind of a beginning story. I don't know if you want to go off on other things, Matt.
Well, there's so many directions we could take this, and I'm sort of thrilled to be able to dive in on, maybe a couple of them. You said September 27th, you were 24, but you don't know why that day. Would that suggest then that you'd had many like events take place that you didn't make that decision on?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because my mom my mom was an alcoholic as well, and she had stopped 2 years prior to me. And so we hung out a few times while I was drinking. And when I would, when I'm pretty buzzed up, I would tell her I'm this close from stopping. So it must have been subconsciously in me, because I don't even remember these conversations I had with her, some of them, because I was drinking. But she would tell me that I had been saying it for like 6 months prior to me making that decision. So, yes, I guess to answer your question, it was floating around in my brain, because I think, when your life becomes unmanageable in almost every area, where you have no footing, I had nothing to grab a hold of and say, well, I'm doing this good. Like nothing was left. There wasn't anything left. I mean, I had friends, well, those I was losing all of them. They'd tell me, you were such an asshole last night, and that's not me. I'm not that person. So I think it was just weighing on me, and I was losing every aspect of my life. And I thought, yeah, that's probably why. But it was just in the morning, woke up and I was like, that's it. I remember I was like standing in a Moe's. I don't know if you know where Moe's is. It's like a burrito store or something. That's where I made the decision. It was like, when I say it was in the morning, I drank the night before. So morning for me was like noon, right? Like it was noon. And that's when I made that decision. And it's weird how it was just random. It felt random at the time, but when I look back, it all makes sense.
And I've never been a drinker or drunk, so I really don't understand some of what you're describing, not remembering how you got there or what conversations you had. Like I've never experienced that. Is that is that the thrill of it? Is that the high of it? I don't know. You guys need to sort of help me understand
Well,
what it is that draws you to want to do that and not
for
remember it.
me,
Isn't
it's
it to enjoy it?
so for me, and it's funny because I noticed this in my 9-year-old. He's not drinking. No, don't worry. But I noticed this craving to never want it to end, like the high. So when I have that buzz or whatever from the drinking, I don't want that to end, and I only want it to get better and intensify and intensify. And that leads me on a path to where I end up not remembering anything. And it was a vicious cycle, because every time I said I won't do that, I ended up doing it. Now, when I think about it now, I don't even know who that person is because this is 21 years now of sobriety for me. So like I don't even know who that person is. And I can't even imagine that I would do that now. But at the time, that's who I was. That's my whole identity. And I think a lot of it had to do with not feeling like I had any purpose or not having, it could have been a lot deeper, right? It could be that I'm just an addict. That's a gene thing. Or maybe it's that I, you know, didn't have enough purpose in my life. And so that became the kind of medicine to keep me from facing that, facing the hard truth that you need to actually go through it. Like we've talked about, Matt, like you have to go through it. Yeah, it sucks. You haven't accomplished much. You didn't go to school, you failed out, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on and on. Are you going to go through it or are you going to drink your way, and just push it off to the next, like kicking the can down the road? And I think that alcohol did that for me in the beginning. It helped me feel better about my current life, but then it spiraled into something different.
So I would imagine, I don't know, Ryan, you might speak to this as well, but you shared a little bit of your story and how it got turned around to the point where you got married and now you've got a little fella who's what, 4 months old now?
Hmm.
And I think for everyone listening, there's always this mindset in the background saying, today's the day. What was it, Joe? Because in Ryan's story, if you haven't heard it, is a pretty cool one, but Ryan's fork in the road was a freak car accident at an intersection that he previously had an accident at, and it was this divine appointment, which we've talked about. But it doesn't sound to me like you had this divine appointment stop you and grab you by the collar, because September 28th rolled around when you're 24 and the next drink's being slid in front of you, or you were still bartending. So you're actually handling this. What was it that kept you on track to staying true to that decision of I'm done? Because there's people out there in every walk of being stuck in, we've, classed it an addiction, but, there's gamblers out there. There's, people that are violent. There's people that are, liars or, addicted to pornography, right? Thieves, right? It doesn't matter what you want to list it as. At some point in their journey, they said to themselves, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing that today, and tomorrow it'll be day two. You don't seem to have a line in the sand of, oh, wow, that was close. I nearly ended up becoming a lifelong, you know, failure, for lack of a better phrase. But for some reason, yours turned around, and there's got to have been something in there that kept September 28th and September 20th you accountable to staying on track. Have you got anything that you can think of, or have you thought about why you were able to just stop? Because an addict couldn't just stop, right? I mean, if you're an
I
addict,
mean,
you have to have it, but in your case, you stopped 21 years ago. You just said, I'm done, and you haven't had a drink since.
and I think about that a lot because it was kind of a random day, like I said. So, but I did have the benefit of my mom stopping 2 years ago. And I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. So there was a little bit of that in there. Then she went to meetings. So her thing was AA meetings. That was a big deal for her. And so I tried those for a little while and they didn't do much for me. But I think ultimately what kept me going is that I had this like fire inside that I knew I was more than what I was doing. And I knew that if I kept drinking, if I drank at all, that I would, like I said. So mine may have been a little bit of fear-based because I truly believed that I was going to kill someone or kill myself. That was very true to me. And because of my driving, because when you black out driving and you wake up and you're at home, you wake up in the morning and you go check and make sure your car's there. That's pretty scary. But in that moment, I believed that I was, one night away from killing someone and going to jail for the rest of my life, not as a bad person, but as someone who couldn't control his drinking. And I think that fear kind of like smacked me in the face that morning. And that fear stayed with me long enough because I bartended for another 7 years without touching a drink. So that was very rare. Like, I mean, I don't know anyone with a story like that because everyone couldn't believe me either. So I was bartending and competing. So I had to bring all my food and everyone would make fun of me because I brought my lunchbox and I wouldn't eat the food at the restaurant or the bar and I wasn't drinking either. And there was something about it became kind of an ego pride thing too, like look what I can do. Like look how disciplined I can be. And that became kind of a badge for me too. Not to brag on, but it was a badge of you are more than you were, right? And that I think maybe it got stronger and stronger and I kept getting evidence of the benefits. So like the evidence of not drinking were very clear from the very beginning. Like I had more money, I had better sleep, like there were a lot of benefits right away. And maybe that also helped because I was drinking or getting high every single night. There was not a night where I was not sober.
And that was for how many years?
Probably from 17 to 24, so 7 years. I mean, 17, I wasn't every night. I couldn't be because I lived. But, once I got on my own, once I moved to Gainesville, which was like 18 and a half, 19, there wasn't a day, maybe a day, maybe 2 days. So it was like I did all of it in a short period of time and got it all out of my system or something like that. So, but
So what does it look like, both of you? I'm asking you both now. What does it look like the day after doing that? What does it feel like, Ryan? I'll start with you. What does it feel like? What does it look like? We've all been in the gym industry for quite a while now. Ryan, you own 2 gyms for crying out loud, so you can speak to this. But what was it like for you that made you think, well, I don't want to do it anymore or not as much?
Well, like Joe said, I mean, physically you feel like crap. That's with the poor sleep, and a lot of times I would eat bad as well. When I was drinking, the food would get out of control, and just the cravings with food would go crazy. And so, you're filling your stomach with a bunch of crap, and your liver's on fire from trying to process the alcohol, and you wake up the next day and you just feel awful. And so that for me, there's a lot of guilt involved. The next day you wake up, you feel guilty, but it's tough because you search for that dopamine hit again the next day or the day after, and you got to find it some way or another. And I think everybody does find it in some way, whether it's, competing in bodybuilding or working out or helping others, whatever that thing is, that dopamine hit we all crave. I think we get it one way or another, right, Joe?
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's funny because not funny, but it's exciting for me because the longer I go without drinking and without having this addiction rule me or almost anything rule me, I learn more the things that drive me and why they drive me and the story that I've created over time, the loops, the patterns, like the loops in your head that you've just decided are real, which a lot of them are not. And the clearer your head is, the more mental exercising you do, the more you learn about yourself, which is pretty exciting. And I think you can only get that with being clear headed. So it's not that I just want the dopamine hits, I think are actually okay. Um, it's like, it's the idea that you just want them to get more and more and more and higher and higher and higher. And you aren't able to come down and you're not able to regulate once you've had your dopamine hit. Because I see it in my oldest son. In fact, my wife and I were just talking about this. how Jackson has a harder time coming down. He's my younger, and I think he's got that kind of addiction mentality. And then my oldest, he is really good at like regulating dopamine, regulating himself. He naturally knows how. Like if we tell him he can't do something and he was all excited, he'll just kind of shift and do something else, but he won't. Or if he just had an amazing weekend, he knows how to regulate properly. And so, like I was saying before in that book I was reading, A Battle to Fight. Well, that's kind of like getting a dopamine hit, right? Like the battles that you fight or an adventure to live, like risk, exploration, stepping into the unknown. Like those are all things we want. I think that's just like innate in us. But I think with the addictive personality or the addictive mind, it's like we're not good at handling the mundane, normal, the normal stuff where there's no hit.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of the difference.
So I'll ask both of you this because I've seen some pictures, Ryan. We got disconnected for a decade there, and then I saw some pictures of you doing these handstand walks and, a very CrossFit type, physique there that was just jacked and ripped. And of course, I had started your fitness journey when you were a golf pro, and you looked nothing like what you ended up looking like during the time that I didn't know you. And I finally came back into, communication with you. And I saw some of these pictures. And I'm like, dude, like, what were you doing? You must have been juicing up and taking all this stuff. Like, you're absolutely, enormous compared to when I started with you back 2010, I think it was. And I was shocked. And of course, Joe, you got to the point where you were competing. So, I mean, both of you at some point in this journey have been, huge, ripped, at the top of your game, competing in things and winning, and then that gets taken away or it's no longer your focus. So how have you each been able to find the next, or have you found the next? Ryan, I'll ask you first.
Well, yeah, when I started CrossFit back in 2014, I remember I forgot all about alcohol. I didn't drink for I think 18 months because I was working out 7 days a week. I was doing 12 to 14 workouts a week. My only thoughts were, what's the next, or how many grams of sweet potato am I taking in on my next meal? And, I tracked every macro I ate for 2 years straight. And, what was my next workout going to be? And that kind of just consumed my mind to where alcohol I didn't even think about it for a couple of years. And, as my competing kind of dwindled and things went down, from there, that's when alcohol got reintroduced and I started to drink more and more again. Is because I no longer had that I wasn't consumed by something else. And so alcohol crept back in. I think I find that to be true even today, not having the competing, not kind of being on the back end of what I'll call my original fitness journey. Yeah, it's tough.
Joe, walk us through a little bit briefly, because I've got another question for Ryan, but you didn't reintroduce it. Did you find that getting into the fitness business kept you accountable, and that because you stayed in it for longer, you built up a thicker skin to not go back to it? Or are you just, hey, I know if I start again, I'm going to fall off the wagon?
You mean for competing?
Yeah, the drinking was there. You let it go. You got to the point where you're competing. How far did that go? And then you spun it into a fitness career. Was that what kept you from going back?
Yeah, I mean, so, competing took the place of my drinking.
So describe competing, because there's a lot of people that probably don't know what I keep saying or you saying.
Yep. Right.
We all get it, but you're competing doing what?
So I was competing in the NPC division and then the IFBB. So I ended up getting my pro card in the men's physique division, which I was telling Ryan before when you were putting away groceries that, you know, before the men's physique position even was created, there would be no way I would ever get my pro card because you need to do massive amounts of drugs and I would need to put on a lot more muscle. And by the grace of God or whatever, they created this division and it was more for like natural people. And I happened to be natural at the time, and I got my pro card. So then I started competing in this division, men's physique division, as an IFBB pro. And on that level, you can make a name for yourself and actually make a living. So I thought, that's what I'll do. I'll make a living in the IFBB. But then I realized pretty quickly that I still needed to do more drugs for that division. Now that I was a pro, I was getting last place in every show. Now I'm not using that as an excuse. It's just, that's what was happening. I was not winning at all. And I realized I had to make a decision there. So I had to decide, am I going to do more steroids to get bigger, to compete, or am I going to just do it as a hobby, but I have my pro card and I'll compete, but and that's where I ended up moving into the fitness industry. And then I really like the fitness industry, but I love competing because like Ryan said, like you sleep, eat, and think competing. And so that other part of your brain that's like seeking dopamine, you're good. Like you got it all. The problem is that's all you think about. And when you have 3 kids and you have a wife and you're trying to become a present dad, it can get in the way. For me, not for everyone, but for me, that's kind of so. Yeah, I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, I mean, to get your IFBB Pro card is a very unique achievement that for a lot of people, even in Australia, they're like, "What the hell is he talking about?" Right? I mean, you're a pro bodybuilder, right?
Yeah, it's like the NFL of bodybuilding, right? So it's where everyone strives to be if you're a bodybuilder. And I loved the idea. I loved all parts of the bodybuilding, the discipline, the structure, all that. But the longer I go without drinking, the longer I don't feel this obsession to have to always be chasing that high. And now I'm looking to become like a whole person that is present for my kids, because once they're gone, you know how that goes.
Well, there's a lot of sales records that get thrown out there at the clubs and things that you did as a manager. There was a time there where you were the manager, I was your assistant, having come from California and having a hard time making that transition into being a manager in California to working under somebody else. And of course, that transition ended up being a terrific, opportunity for me to meet you and watch your skill set and unfold. And I would hear about these records of what you were able to achieve at Crunch that, probably some of them still stand today. Do you think that you were pouring yourself into that, getting that recognition through that instead?
Yeah, I do actually. That became my identity as well. And that when I quit training, um, I went through some pretty dark times. I thought, because I ended up retiring, and retiring my wife, and it seemed like I was just going to raise my kids and everything was going to be great. But those led to some dark mental times. I didn't, I'm I didn't go back to drinking. I didn't do anything like that, but definitely dark times because my identity was completely gone. And then I didn't have the chase, the dopamine chased, right? And maybe for another episode we can talk about, my Costa Rica trips, because they were profound and I think they've changed me in ways that I can't even explain. And it may be something for another time, but those trips really did help me a lot.
Ryan, can I ask you a question then as you listen to Joe's story and some of the similarities that you guys have had and stepping out? We've all been in the fitness business, in different ways, setting records in different places at different times, doing different things. But at some point, we all stepped away. We've talked at length regarding your inability to maybe find that next thing. Do you find that hearing Joe describe what he's been through the last probably, 2, 3 years is similar to your journey after you sold your 2 businesses?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the purpose kind of goes away, and I think I said it on a previous podcast, but I had some advice from a mentor who had said before I sold the gym, he was like, make sure you have your next thing lined up before you sell your business because you're going to need it. And of course I was like, no, I just got to get rid of this gym. Everything's going to be great afterward. And, I sold the gym and then I was like, holy crap, what do I do now? And those words were definitely some sage advice to kind of have your next thing lined up and be ready to go with what's next, because now it's been a little over a year, well, actually a year and a half now of being quote unquote unemployed and just struggling to find what that next thing's going to be. We've talked in length about it being kind of the stay-at-home dad role sort of thing, but in terms of a career as an entrepreneur and that sort of thing, not really knowing what's next has definitely been eating at me quite a bit.
It's I don't know if this is related, but I was going through the same thing as you are, Ryan, recently, and I thought, well, the only way to solve that, and I think Matt has done a really good job, is to just do the next thing without thinking this is going to be the ultimate thing, right? So, like, take a step forward, like, move forward and take a step. So that's, I remember Matt saying that's what he did. He just started moving. Like, he didn't even know where it was going to take him, but he's like, I'm just going to start moving and things will get better. And I think Jocko Willink says this too, something about if you're lost in the forest, what do? You just take one step, right? Like, you take a step towards something, right? You may be lost, but the lack of movement, and that the reason I'm saying this is because I experienced it, and now I've been moving forward. And I no longer say this is the thing. I just say I'm doing this, and I'm going to do this the best of my ability right now, and I'm going to let that be what it is. And I learned that, like, I really absorbed that when I went on this Costa Rica thing, and I got this wave of unconditional. This may be a little cheesy, but the unconditional love for yourself, I believe, helps you in every area of your life. Like, because if you're timid and scared of the next thing, or you're like still thinking about it, it's because you think you can fail. And then, like, you're not, like, if you love yourself, you're like, I'm just going to go for it. And I don't care what happens, right? Because ultimately I'm good. And that was something I was missing. Like, I was always judging myself. Like, if the next thing I do isn't like as good as that thing before, then I'm a failure and this and this. And maybe it's subconscious. But so for me, that really helped make me say, no, I'm going to move forward like Matt has done. I'm going to move forward. And that's something I think Matt has uh, like a gift at, is that he can move forward. He's able to adapt, and he's able to, move forward in tough times. And I give him kudos for that. And I'm inspired by it. It's helped me a lot to say, you know what, just take the next step.
Yeah, appreciate you saying that, Joe. I would follow up by saying we're 33 episodes in today, and I know that you're aware of the podcast. We've talked a little bit about it. We've had conversations around it. What did it feel like when I said, hey, would you share your story on the podcast? What went through you?
Felt honored to be. I mean, I felt like, oh, that's, the fact that you invited me to come made me feel like, yeah, just grateful. Grateful that I can be a part of your messaging, and hopefully I can help someone. Maybe a little bit nervous because, you always have this identity of who you are and who you think you should be and who others think that you are. But I will say, I had a revelation when I went in the jungle, and it almost all went away. And that's like, so it's just all gone. And now my focus is the next step, right? Like, not judging, not being too harsh on myself, just giving myself love as if I was my 9-year-old son. Like, I try to think of, how would I handle my son when he makes a mistake or he has a silly idea, or like, that's how you should handle yourself. At least that's how I want to approach myself, as if I'm my own, dad, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And the reason I asked you that is because I've known you now for 5 years, and you and I have had so many discussions about ideas and thoughts and these grand businesses and, changing the world, right? And I'm like, man, I wonder if they'll actually follow through and beyond. And the reason I say that is because we've had a lot of people that at the moment that they've been asked or shortly after, they're pumped. They're ready to go. They're like, man, I want to get this story out there, this message, and I think it can really impact some people. And then for one reason or another, there's been a fall off or a fall through or something's come up and it's just never happened again. And that's not to speak bad about anybody that's done that, because maybe their time isn't right now for their story to be shared. So that's okay. But I wanted to hear from you, and you mentioned it, right? A little bit of my identity, right? You were putting on the line your identity of who you think people think you are in the gym scene and walking around Crunch and, in your neighborhood, and you're putting that on the line. And then you followed up with the very beautiful phrase of, just do it, right? Who cares? Because at the end of the day, the more we get into this podcast and the more I talk to people or strangers at the gym, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, you have the podcast, right? I'm like, what is happening here, right? I didn't even know you were listening or you saw one. And these
Yeah.
things are happening. And so it's movement, right? And so for you to be able to share what you've shared today, I know that there's a lot of people out there that have probably trained with you and taken your advice, and they're probably going to hear that and go, wait, what? I had no idea. I just assumed this guy was 14 and started working out and he was always in it and was always perfect and blah, blah, blah. And I think that it's important for our audience and those that might listen to this episode to realize that we're all on this journey and we're all just trying to figure it out. And now we've got this podcast today where we've got 3 people really in the midst of trying to figure it out, but be willing to peel back those layers with each other, and more importantly, in front of a camera that's going to share it with a lot of people that may have different ideas about who we are. But ultimately, if we don't do that, I don't think we can have the healing that we need inside of us to have a bigger impact, which I know I've talked to Ryan about a lot, and I've talked to you about a lot. I've got a vision of having a bigger impact. And, maybe you're a part of that story now where we can build something here locally, and that'll drive Ryan and his wife, Erica, to move into the Sarasota area for us. But, I see a bigger vision of something coming together here where you've got these 3 fitness professionals that have all been down in the dumps and, really looking at life going, I don't even know what the point is anymore, yet somehow still managing to take that next step forward. And so kind of challenge you here to think about, maybe we could get Strength to Overcome up and running in a local sense and build something here. And, you can be a part of my regeneration back and getting stronger. And, Ryan's got a purpose there, even though he's remote right now in Jacksonville, to be a part of that journey, until he moves here. So I'm putting the pressure on both of you now live, episode 33. But, that's what gets me pumped. And every week after this podcast, whether it's just Ryan or, a special guest has joined us, I get off this and I am on fire. I'm like, right, who needs some help? How can I be of service? Right, who's going to come into my life that I have to be really sensitive to, that I've got a message for them, or maybe they've got a message for me. And it happened just the other day. I hadn't seen this person for ages. And I was tied up doing some stuff and we're trying to connect to, maybe grab a bite or something outside of there. And I'm like, man, I'm absolutely swamped. And he had the 60-second phrase at the time. I won't go into detail, but it just lifted me up out of this pit of frustration or just a lack of direction on what do I do next. And within 60 seconds, this individual just spoke into my life, almost like as I walked away, looking behind me to make sure he didn't just disintegrate into this puff of smoke, because there's just no way he could have had those words for me in that moment. As he just happened to walk one way and I came out a door, it was this complete random divine appointment where I got something from this gentleman that has just reinvigorated a direction that I was thinking about, but I needed from him, right? And so maybe on a small scale, we're tapping into that here, lads, where, yeah, there's 3 of us, but we're all saying the same things about what's happened, But the only way to get to the next thing is to take that next step. So, Joe, I want to thank you for sharing that and reminding me I've just got to keep on moving forward, and something bigger here is building, and I feel like you're a part of that now. So that I'm inspired, and I think, Ryan, I keep nagging you. Are we getting any closer to Erica pulling the trigger on where she could move to?
Well, we need to kind of get that process rolling. She's got to start talking to some different places, and hopefully we can see what's going to happen. So it's definitely in the possibilities.
Yeah, I need some help down here, boys, and I think you guys can be just the tonic to get me over the line. Joe, I feel like I know you, so I feel like we could probably have multiple episodes, and so I think there's a future or a very, soon follow up to this, because I know a lot of people are going to hear this and they know some of the other stories,
Yes.
right? That you've sort of touched on just briefly, where we both did step away from the fitness industry and retired, so to speak. And now we're both back looking for, what's next. And so there's going to be some follow up here, I think, needed. But this podcast is called Strength to Overcome, right? It's strength, where we're using that word because it comes in many formats. Joe, I know you've given me a lot of advice since I've met you just to help me through, but at times sounds like you've been through some hell and back as well. Is it something that you'd be interested in joining forces with us and building this thing up? I know that sounds like I'm putting you on the spot there, but you've got a fantastic journey ahead of you, and it can be anything. I know Ryan's journey. I keep putting him on the spot week after week. I did this probably a month ago. I put him on the spot with some stuff, but I really want to have an impact. And as we look at our spread here of our age, right, we within 7 or 8 years of each other, so we're all in that phase of where we're husbands, we're dads. We've all been in the fitness business. We've all been at our prime, but we're all just missing something. So maybe it's not during this episode, but can we put our heads together and come up with something that, we pray on, we meditate on, and maybe we're all actually looking for the same thing but don't notice it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely 100% down to be a part of this, and we've had conversations. I I want to help wherever I can, but through helping selfishly, that helps me as well, right? I mean, it helps to just fellowship with men, bring your skills to the table, and maybe they can be used, maybe they can't in that time, but ultimately we're all just trying to grow together, and different experiences are going to help. But we do know one thing is the only way is through. It's something that I believe is so valuable, is that, like, I did a meeting last year, maybe a year and a half ago, and it was very casual and it was very nonchalant. Show up if you want. We'll read this. No, you don't want to do the cold plunge. Okay, that's fine. Maybe next time. I don't want a group like that. I want a group that pushes you past your comfort zone, but we're there afterwards too. Like, we're not, pushing you for no reason. We're pushing you because we know that you've said openly that this is an area you want to improve, and we're going to push you. We're going to make you, like Matt, you've done with me, that cold plunge. My cold plunge sits there empty for a year, and then I have Matt hold me accountable, and now I'm doing it regularly. So thank you for that, by the way, because I'm doing it when we get off. I'll do the cold plunge and sauna. I'm like dedicated again. Sometimes it takes other men that you respect, that you hold to a higher standard, to come and say, hey, this is what you want. You've said you want this, so let's do it. And that's where, so anyways, that's the kind of meetings I want to be a part of, is meetings that don't just sit around and talk about what could be, but we talk about what is, what's going, like what we're doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. We're doing it. We're moving forward, and whatever it looks like, I know that we'll always be mates through it. I know Ryan and I spent a good portion of more than a decade apart, and I didn't know what was going on in his life and vice versa. So, divine appointments can happen quickly, and things can unfold dramatically. And I find that the more I clear out the noise of, whatever it is that's trying to drag me down, and for you guys, you've talked a little bit about alcohol being that thing in the past, but whatever's trying to drag me down in any given day, whether it be my attitude or my actions or a thought that I let sneak in, right? The minute I let those take over, it's almost like the grand vision of what I think can happen almost just disappears, And I think it's important for all of us to have something we're working towards. I put Ryan to the sword a few times about having something he's working towards. Not that being a stay-at-home dad isn't something epic, but I do think that as I hear more testimonies and talk to more people, we need more than that as men. And that's not to say that we need something more than women or that what they're doing is not important. Let's not get down that rabbit hole, right? But what he's doing as a stay-at-home dad while his wife finishes her, 12-year journey of becoming a full-blown doctor, that's an incredible sacrifice that you're making, Ryan. So I applaud that. But I think there's something that bringing us together, right, and keeping each other accountable isn't really found anywhere else. It's not even found in, meetings or even some church groups, right? It can be very superficial. And so I'll go on record here to say that, 8 months in now, and I've been really focused on being a better husband and a better father and keeping myself accountable to what started this journey and making sure that I stay focused on the bigger things and not getting caught up in anything that takes my focus away. And Joe and I have talked a lot about that as well. So you know what I'm talking about with regards to being back in the fitness business with a lot of distractions. And, I've been very open about that. But, 8 months in, I think almost to the day where my life has been turned around and I'm, recalibrating that energy into something that now maybe we do locally and just growing it. And so the only way is through, right? So, I'm 8 months dry in my arena, right? So that you will understand that there. But being focused during the toughest times of your life is what's hardest. So thank you, Joe, for being on. I think there's going to be more of these episodes coming up and something local brewing. Ryan, you've just got to figure it out, man. We just need you down here. Bradenton is a great area.
Beautiful.
And we can find you some. I got my real estate license still, so get on down here, man. We've got a lot of unpacking to do on what Joe's talked about today. So please talk to her, pray on it. Maybe Joe and I will, come across the perfect location for, your wife to work at, right? It could come through one of us. We don't know, right? So be open to it is my point. Be open.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's all we got for you this week. Like, subscribe, and let's share this podcast and grow this thing together. How about it?
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Stay strong, guys. Cheers.
See ya.